Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Financial Wellbeing and Mental Health webinar, just in time for Stress Awareness Day. I wonder if anyone's doing anything today for Stress Awareness Day in the workplace. It's a really great day to cover this, actually, because in the UK, we are a nation of people who are stressed about money and finances, debt, and not earning enough. So recent research has actually shown that around 77% of us in the UK are worried and concerned and stressed about money. It is the biggest contributor to the UK, to people in the UK when it comes to stress. What some of the research also found was debt was a massive problem for people, but also 80% of people said that they wish that they were earning more money. So it's not just about the money that's going out the other end, there's also a deficit of it coming in the front end as well. When it comes to these financial stresses, unfortunately, it is impacting our mental health as well. We know that stress is a contributor to physical health problems. Chronic stress can impact our physical health, our heart, it can impact our immune system, and chronic stress can actually impact our issues around sorry, my phone's just going off there. I just need to turn it over so it's not distracting us. Our financial stresses can actually impact our ability to reproduce as well. So chronic stress can actually shut down reproductive systems, especially in women. So stress is really important. It's really important that we're able to make sure that everything that we do is about looking after our mental health, and financial well-being becomes a big part of that. So let's get going. So this is the Our Minds Work, Creating Mentally Healthier Workplaces That Thrive webinar. We are here to help organizations to thrive through building mentally healthier workplaces through strategic planning, training, consultancy. We do lots of things to support our clients through that journey. My name's Emily Pearson, and I'm going to be delivering the session for you this morning. So just to cover off a couple of learning objectives, we are going to be looking at understanding what does this term financial well-being mean. We've obviously got a little bit of an idea now of what financial stress is. So what is the opposite to that? What does it actually mean? How can we identify the links between mental health and financial well-being, and the other way around as well? We are going to talk about money stigma and how we can tackle it at work, and identify how your organisation can support and improve financial well-being of employees. And at the end of it all, know where to signpost employees to support as well. So let's get going. I'm going to start off with a little quiz on the poll. So as I said, this should literally just jump up on your screen, and I'll just give people a couple of moments to fill. We have 5 questions. Oh. Sorry if it hasn't just popped up. There isn't very much I can do about that. But you should just be able to go down and select the answers to the questions. Just give people a few more moments, because we've only got 4 people who've completed it so far. A few more moments. We've got 2 more people just to do that. Right, end the poll. Okay, let's see what we've got here. So question number 1, what percentage, oh, I don't know why that keeps doing that in the background. What percentage of employees feel comfortable talking about their money worries at work? Well done to the 93% who said only 36% of employees feel comfortable talking about their money worries at work. And we are going to be covering stigma, what that is and how to tackle it when it comes to, providing employees with a safe, stigma-free environment to talk about any money worries they have. Number 2, what percentage of employees think their employer cares about their financial health? Well done to the 71% that said it was 30%. Pretty low, so no wonder people don't feel as if they're able to talk about their financial problems with an employer if people don't necessarily think that their employer cares about it. Number 3, what is the biggest reported cause of stress for people in the UK? So obviously money, definitely 71%, well done, who said that. Quite interesting that 21% of you said work. Work does play a contributing factor when it comes to our high levels of stress, and work-related stress is currently the highest it's ever been in the whole 18 years that HSE have been collecting data on that. Number 4, what was the top answer from employers on why they haven't introduced new forms of support to employees to help employees with rising costs? So we've got 79% of you said too many other priorities in our organisation. That was one of the top answers. However, the top answer was we don't think employees want more support. And when we look at our stigma and stigma cycle, what we see here is a reticence to talk about it. So when we're not talking about it, it feels like there isn't a problem, but actually it's usually the elephant in the room. How many employees in the UK are living in work and poverty? So well done to the 43% who said 1 in 8. And we are going to be talking about what that means. What does it mean to be living in work and poverty? And how can employees recognise this as well? Wonderful. Some really good answers there. So let's get going. One of the things that I just want to talk about today is a really recent report by one of our partners called Wagestream. I am going to send you the link out for you to download the full report because it is really, really interesting. And their report is specifically about how the financial crisis and the rise in living costs are impacting employees in the workplace. Some really kind of stark statistics there that we want to, really raise awareness around, because while our questions there just showed us that, that nobody's talking about it as if it's not even a problem, it is a problem. And we can see that where 70% of UK employees are now worrying more about money. So before all of this happened, before the pandemic happened, financial worries were the biggest contributor to stress. We've just added another 2 layers onto that, which means that 76% of these suffering worse mental health as a result. So we've already talked a little bit about why that might be. Stress is a contributing factor to feeling anxious around things, feeling fear around things, and can actually lead to anxiety, depression, and in some cases, suicidal thoughts and feelings as well. 52% say financial concerns are worrying them most over the next 3 months. So, gosh, I don't even think we're at the height of the heating costs yet. We're going to see that over the winter really, really begin to increase for people and really take a toll on their finances and stress. 30% say their employer cares about their financial health. So as we've just seen, a lot of you kind of recognize that that might have been an issue there, but this has actually decreased and has gone down from over half, 52% since November 2021. We then have 76% of employees negatively affected by the cost of living crisis, but they haven't told their employer. And we are going to think about some ways that we can decrease that statistic and increase support for people. And ultimately, what we're seeing is 4 extra days of worry every month for those who have had to dip into savings to make ends meet due to rising costs. And if you think about, not everybody has savings. Very few people will actually have savings to dip into, but when people are dipping into the savings, it is increasing the levels of stress. And if you think about why we may be saving money, might not always just be for, you know, our next holiday. It may be for, you know, emergency situations. You know, things happen, life happens, and we if we don't have that financial security there, that can impact our stress levels even more. So I'm just going to pop everybody back on again. So somebody had come off mute. There we go. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into mental health and financial stress and what that actually means. We've talked already a little bit about the impact that it has with some statistics there, but what I've been talking about so far is how worrying about money makes people's mental health worse, creates stress, creates anxiety, can trigger mental health problems like anxiety disorders and depression, and can lead to suicide as well. What we saw in 2008 with the Great Depression, that suicide rates actually increased by 10%, and the biggest increase was with men rather than women. Men already have very high rates of suicide, and we know that they die by suicide 3 times often than women do already. So there could potentially be some really tragic outcomes over the next couple of months if we're not able to support people. And having poor mental health means that managing money is harder as well. So we've got this kind of vicious cycle that when we're already struggling with our mental health, it can mean that trying to deal with our financial situations is harder. People who may have been diagnosed with like depression, bipolar disorder, may use money to kind of self-medicate for making us feel better when we're not feeling particularly great. With bipolar disorder, if someone's experiencing mania, it can be quite common to overspend and get into a lot of debt as well. So we see this kind of vicious cycle that just goes round and round and round. And how do you get off the merry-go-round? How do you really start to get out of that cycle, especially when it may be hard for you to ask for help or even access support there? So one of the things that we've talked about already is in-work poverty. So I just want to do a bit of a deeper dive into this, because everything I've talked about so far are just generally people in your workplace. Yeah, at work you have around about 1 in 6 people who are already experiencing a mental health problem. We have just under 1 million people in the UK in work who are experiencing work-related stress, anxiety and depression and are off work because of that. 50% of sickness absence is due to work-related stress, anxiety and depression here in the UK. So just generally people at work are already struggling with their mental health. Now I want to add to that the impact of in-work poverty. So in-work poverty is classed as when a person's income after the housing costs have been taken out is less than 60% of the national average. You know, you may be sat there yourself, 2 jobs to make ends meet, may actually be have a job and worrying about how you're going to afford to get to work once the increase in living costs begin to rise. And this is the impact that in-work poverty has. So we have 1 in 8 workers who are already living in poverty. So that's people living in poverty who have a job. The cost of the living crisis, as I said, we're not quite there yet with the worst of it. And we are going to see this impacting these people who are already struggling even worse. The energy costs obviously have already increased, but again, we haven't seen that peak of it yet. And the national living wage hasn't increased in line with inflation as well. So we've got these contributing factors again, not enough coming in and too much of it going back out again. Many employers don't have the resources to offer pay rises to beat inflation. But for some of those employers that do, how are they making sure that pay rises are being discussed every year, being looked into, and what other ways can workplaces support people during this difficult time? And at the end of the session, that's really where we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into what support can we provide? So we've got a better understanding now of what's going on with the financial problems, the stresses. One of the things that we like to do is we like to give people tools to help them to improve their mental health and really evaluate, what is the impact that this is having on my mental health and what do I need to do about it? So I'd like to share with you, some of you will have already seen this who are clients of Our Minds Work. It's always a great refresher. This mental health continuum model was designed to help people to easily evaluate their mental health based on a traffic light system. So it's very, very simple to use. I'm going to take you through it now, and then we'll see how easy it is for you to use the model. So we start off just asking people to reflect a little bit about if you've noticed a difference in how you're feeling. Have others commented on a change in you? So they might have noticed a difference in you as well. Are you or someone else worried about this? And have you experienced something upsetting? This could be relationship breakdown, loss of a job, money trouble, or any kind of illness. We're talking about money troubles there, but life doesn't just happen in isolation. It may be a number of things that you've experienced that's really piling on the demands and the pressure. So we all have mental health, just like we have physical health. Some days it's great and some days it's not so great. Sometimes we become physically unwell and mentally unwell. And unfortunately, at the end of any health continuum, we have death. And that is a definite reality. Just want to give people a little bit of a trigger warning here that I'm not going to go into details around suicide, but we are going to be looking at suicide in a little bit more depth than I've talked about so far. So we start in the green. What's you on a good day? Think about your normal. So what's your normal energy levels like, sleeping patterns, appetite? How often do you normally socialize? That tells you that this is you on a good day. This is you with a good mood. You're feeling productive and engaged in your day-to-day world. I'm not feeling myself is when we're reacting to stresses. So when we're reacting to stresses, they could be exactly what we've just talked about so far, financial worries and any other additional stresses that may be piling on that pressure to the point where they become overwhelming. So you may be noticing that it's been a change to your sleeping pattern. Maybe you're struggling to sleep, waking up worrying about what's going on in your life at the moment. You may be feeling tired all the time, not having a lot of energy like you normally would. You may be feeling overwhelmed by worry, feeling quite irritable and snappy. And these are really common experiences of stress. 100% of us will experience stress. And if this has just been going on one day or a couple of days, there are definitely things we can do to get back into the green section again. And we'll look at those in a moment. But what we don't want to do is just leave it and ignore it and stick our heads in the sand, because unfortunately, once this becomes more than just a few days and we're talking about week on week on week on week, it can get to the point where if it's been lasting longer than 4 weeks and it's not getting any better, you may actually see those symptoms increasing to the point where you're unable to function. The severity of the symptoms are you're really finding it difficult to engage in day-to-day life. So your productivity may be decreasing, you may be struggling at work, you might find that you're falling out with loved ones, feeling a lot more anxious and sad and hopeless than you normally would. You may also be increasing your use of alcohol and drugs as well to self-medicate, and just generally finding the feelings that you're having very, very difficult to cope with. So in the mentally ill stage, in the red stage here, as we can see, this is somebody who's experienced severe mental ill health and is potentially having thoughts that life's not worth living. They may be having thoughts of suicide, they may have a plan for suicide, and maybe at an emotional and mental health crisis that we need emergency support for, or immediate care and treatment and attention for that person. So just with that in mind, I'd really like to think about, where you are today on there. For me, I'm probably in the yellow section today. It's been quite busy here at Our Minds Work. We haven't had as many staff as we normally would, which means I've been doing a lot more. And I found last night I kept waking up and thinking about work. So it's just been one day. It was just last night, but definitely a couple of those things in the yellow section today. And that's pretty kind of normal, you know, when you've got additional pressures to think about. So, you know, where do you think you are? And while you're thinking about that, feel free to share it if you would like to share it, like I just did. If not, what we're going to do is move on to, well, how do we get help when we need it? And if I'm in that yellow, orange and red section because of financial stresses that have got me there, you know, how do I ask for help? Because financial stigma is one of the biggest barriers for people asking for help. So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into that. So stigma is generally a vicious cycle, and stigma is the same whether it's money stigma, stigma around mental health, and what this can unfortunately lead to is discrimination. What we are seeing through those statistics as well, that we start at the top here, and what we can see here is there's a silence around the problem. So in the workplace, nobody's saying that they're struggling with money, even though we know that there are very high numbers of people at work who are struggling. Nobody's talking about it. Employers are not talking about it. Employees are not talking about it. A lot of that is generally down to a lack of education. When we are not necessarily educated around these things, we might notice that we fall upon the stereotypes. And if you think about what stereotypes might appear for people who are living in poverty, these can be really stigmatizing, can't they? Nobody wants to be seen as somebody who has got no money and living in poverty. So these stereotypes begin to create fear, and that impacts on the silence. It then really kind of drills us down and go, no, I'm not talking about this, because if I do talk about it, what are people going to think of us? So that silence increases the perception of stigma. So those with the money problems become frightened of the stigma and discrimination, and then we just go around in this vicious cycle. So if you can think about how do we break this cycle, where is it that you feel that as a workplace, you can actually do something to break this cycle? Feel free to pop that in the chat box. I am going to have a little look in there now while you're thinking about that. You know, how do you break that cycle? What could you do in the workplace to really tackle this stigma? Hello, section 2, not being sleeping brilliantly, busy at work. Yeah, definitely, Nikki can definitely relate to that. Hopefully we'll get some ideas of things that we can do after our work today to get us back into that green session again. Sarah's in the green, that's wonderful. Been a good week so far, wonderful. Socialising, really pleased to hear that, that's great. Mary, yes, agree, I'm in the yellow too, loads going on, sleep not great, need to be, yeah, need to be proactive. We're so good at telling other people about this stuff. We've got to do it ourselves to get back in the green. And Maureen in the green, have had a good few productive weeks and some good weeks. I'm feeling pretty good at the moment. Do you know what's lovely about all of those comments? All of those comments are from our clients who have been working with this model for years and years. Some of them, I mean, Mary Wallace there, we've been working together for many, many years now. And what's amazing is it's created such an easy way to talk about this. So thank you very much for showing how that model can be used so well and easily. So we've got Jane looking to have some finance sessions in the workplace, bite-sized pieces, so people may talk a bit more, budget and support similar. That's great stuff, Jane, that's good to hear. Maybe you drop in surgery to get people sharing their views and ideas without their managers or an anonymous web chat. I'm in the orange, but have taken steps to get more into the yellow. Mine is menopause. Oh, Jane, yes, absolutely. Last week we were delivering some sessions on menopause and mental health, and we used that model to say, you know, if the menopause is impacting you to the point where you're in the orange, there's a big problem there. You know, how do you get support to get back out of that? Brilliant. Some wonderful comments there. It's great to hear that you're thinking so much about this. So, right, we know where we are. We know how stress is impacting us. None of us today were in there worrying about money. However, that could have been somebody who was saying, I'm in the yellow and it's because of my finances. So then what is financial well-being? We've talked a lot about financial stress and the impacts, and ultimately the impacts on a workplace is that you have people who are in the orange and yellow. They're not productive, they're not engaged, they're not thriving. This is really difficult and something we need to help people to tackle. So financial well-being comes from a feeling of security and being in control of your money. And if you don't have control over your money, this could be things like debt. It comes in and it goes out. This could be addictions where you're spending more money on drugs, alcohol, gambling, so that you have that lack of control over the money that you do have. And then the security. So if you're thinking about what makes you financially secure, are your assets, are the things that you have that you know can help you if there is something important that happens, there's an emergency. And, we have recently just had an experience in my own kind of personal life where a very close person to me, their husband died, and there was no health insurance in place, there was no will in place, and the stresses that has caused on the individual has been immense. So that financial security really we have to think about how do we broaden it out. It's not just about having money in the bank. Making the most of your money. So again, when you do have that money, how are we able to make the most of it? And we're not spending it on, Amazon every day because on stuff that we don't actually need. I bet we've all done that at some point. I know my husband's good at doing that. I'm like, why have you bought this? We don't even need it. So making the most out of the money that you actually have. Dealing with the unexpected, and I've just mentioned one there, but it's just sod's law, isn't it, that it gets to 1 or 2 days before payday and the boiler breaks, or the dog needs to go to emergency vets. These unexpected financial issues mean that if we don't have security from our financials there, we're unable to deal with those unexpected problems, and then that creates even more stress for us. Being on track for a healthy financial future. So this is about planning for the future. It might be quite difficult to think about the future when you're in your 20s, but it's really important that we're able to, I've had this myself, at the age of 44 now, starting to only finally think about my future. And, how do we plan for that? And, it's only 20 odd years before retirement for me. That actually isn't a very long time in the scale of trying to save money and plan for that. And how are we financially resilient so that we're confident and empowered when we do go through these challenging times? So resilience is about being able to bounce back. And just like we've seen in our continuum model there, if we're in the orange, how do we use our strategies and skills and tools to help us to get back into that green section again? So with that in mind, this is the last page of the continuum model. So if you were like me and you were in the yellow, it's not great when you feel like that. If you had a cold, we would probably be doing stuff, wouldn't we? We'd be taking some Lemsips, we'd get the nasal sprays out, we'd be doing things to make us feel better. So if we are feeling this way, what kind of things can we do? When it comes to financial stress, take control and tackle the problem is one of the first steps to recovery and getting the support that you need. We aren't all experts in everything, so who can help us? Who are the experts? Who are our friends and family? Who is the support available to help us tackle the problem? Sticking our heads in the sand can only make things worse. What are we doing to look after our general health and well-being as well? Can we eat a little bit healthier, get outside, do a little bit of exercise, tire ourselves out so we hopefully get a better night's sleep tonight. Do something that you enjoy, that makes us happy, our hobbies and interests. If there are things at work that's causing that stress, you can consider a stress risk assessment. It is a legal requirement for employees to prevent work-related stress by doing stress risk assessments. So if it's work-related stress, it's important that we have that in place as employers, and we know that we can consider these for people who are experiencing work-related stress. We also think about how can you help people with a stay well at work support plan. So how do you look at supportive measures for people to help them to stay well while they're at work? And you may have an employee assistance program that you can use, or you can signpost people to. A lot of EAPs these days do actually provide financial guidance as well. If you are in the orange today, again, you know, if you had a chest infection, which is a little bit worse than a cold, you would seek an expert who could help you. You would seek out some treatment and take those steps for a treatment plan that you can put in place to support yourself as well. So can you speak to a professional that can help? Maybe the doctor could be your first point of call, so that you can get an assessment and they can provide some treatment, or at least signpost you to the right mental health services that you might need. Again, who can help us? Our community support, our friends, our family, our workplaces are a key part of resilience, and knowing that we've got people there if we're struggling. You can use 111 to talk to somebody about your mental health at this point as well. And just think about how you stay well. And you could also consider things like reasonable adjustments in the workplace at this point also. If somebody is in the red, or you are in the red, this is really serious. And if you couldn't breathe and it was more than a chest infection, we would be dialing 999 and getting emergency support. So this becomes really serious. We need to look at urgent appointment with a doctor, call the crisis team, call 111, or if we're unable, or that person's unable to keep themselves safe, call 999 or go to where need. So what we can see with this continuum model there, it doesn't matter what is causing the poor mental health, whether it is financial stress or something else, being able to evaluate where we are helps us to recognize what actions we can take to get back into that green section. We can't always do it on our own. We need to tackle the problems. We need to find the experts. We need to get the right treatments and support in place for us. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to ask a bit of a contentious question, I think, because I think currently when it comes to well-being in the workplace, we do a lot, don't we? We do mental health awareness, there's well-being stuff going on, we're talking about menopause. This week's men's health month, we're in November, so we're talking about, you know, men's mental health, physical health. Where does it stop? Should employers provide information and support around financial well-being? And if you say yes or no, why do you think that is? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Feel free to use the chat box, or I'd love you to unmute yourself and tell me a little bit, what are your thoughts? You know, is this something that employers should be getting involved in or not? Mary Wallace, I'm sure you will have something to say on this. Go on, I can hear you now, I think. You've unmuted. Oh, she's unmuted and then frozen. Anyone else have any thoughts? Even if it's a yes. Sarah?
Hi Emily, it's Maureen.
Maureen.
Sorry if I interrupted. I kind of think yes, but I feel as if I'm in a funny position when I'm the one who negotiates with trade unions to do with pay increases and that. So if on one hand you want to give this, you know, support, and you've got your workers wanting more money, it's a difficult one, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the challenge, isn't it? Absolutely. So you feel, it feels like it's morally the right thing to do.
But then I know there would be crossovers. You know, I would be sitting in meetings and they would be saying, well, you know, the way to help us is to give us more money, you know, and as we know, you cannot always do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a bit of a challenge for you there. Absolutely. And as a small business, you know, we recognize that as well. We're only a tiny business. One of the things that we did this year was we gave everybody £1,500, just a one-off payment, to actually help with the rise in the living costs over the next kind of couple of months. And, you know, we are also considering pay rises, but we looked at, you know, what can we do? What about our financial situation? How can we help people? And we've seen other companies do that as well. But again, it's not every organization that can do that. I'll come back to you, Mary, because you were frozen there and Sarah had a hand up. Sarah?
Hello.
Hello, Sarah.
Hello. Right. Yes. My view and what we've been doing here is that we should be supporting employees, but there's various ways that we can do it. So we've set up a little intranet section on financial wellbeing and provided a lot of the maps, syndicated information, so people can self-serve, they can look at budget planners, they can look at cost calculators. So we're providing that support. We have run some seminars as well, but they were very poorly attended. But I think that goes back to the stigma. And it's Talk Money Week next week, and we've got our broker coming in to go through with staff what our EAPs can offer them and where they can get discounts. So we're looking at all different ways that we can help, not just giving pay rises and sort of cost of living help. So that's how we're going about it. I definitely think it's something to help. If it stops people being off sick with worry, then it's benefiting us as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. I think that's great to hear that you're looking at it from all angles, because you're right, it may not be as simple as giving out money and pay increases, and it's about looking at other ways that we can do that. Thanks very much, Sarah. Mary.
Hello. Yeah, I totally agree with Sarah there. And Maureen, I mean, when I look at it, I think, well, we're public sector, we're governed, you know, nationally by what pay rises we can give, which isn't much. So you can easily think, well, what can we do? But actually thinking of the stigma and thinking of the scale of the problem, which has really hit home from what you've been saying, I think just to acknowledge that there is a massive issue, and that, as you say, the workplace is somewhere where people can seek support. So really interested in what Sarah was saying there about getting people in, because I don't know who we would get in to talk, or how we would go about getting someone from financial expertise to come in and chat to people, or arrange a webinar or something like that. But I think an internet site is a really good start as well. Put resources on there for people, and just not raise awareness, but just acknowledge that there's a problem and say, we are trying to support you, and just try and get people to talk and acknowledge if they've got an issue themselves.
Some great ideas. There are some other things that we can think about as well, and signpost you to, Mary, if you're looking
that'd
for
be great
stuff. Great, good stuff. Thanks, Mary. Hi, Joanne, you've got your hand up there.
Hiya. Obviously, I'm totally different to everybody else because I'm a frontline worker.
Right.
So all of our officers work on the streets. So we have a learning zone that everybody can come into. And we also have a lot of wall work, going back to the old-fashioned ways when you're sitting on the toilet and you've got that poster in front of you. You know what it is? It's the best way because everybody reads it.
Yes.
And it's funny because it's all at eye level for the men. So as soon as you walk into the toilet, it hits you. But we kind of, well, I'm a mental health advocate for the council, so we have to try and think out the box every time, because we don't have people sitting at a computer every day. So that kind of information doesn't get through to our people. So we have to kind of support them in other ways. And you know what it is? Any help to anybody is a bonus. If people don't want the help, then that's fine. But at least you've done something about to say, you know, I'm here if you need us. We've got numbers. I mean, we're very strong on Health Assured, the new number. So I suppose even if you're not sitting by your computer, you still can give that support to people. My corridor, since I took over being a mental health advocate, my wall is covered with everything. I mean, even behind us, there's alcohol, there's debt, there's menopause, and it's just supporting people in a different way.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Joanne. And we're really proud to have you one of our mental health advocates over there. So I know you do amazing work. And that's such an important point that you made there about making it accessible to people. Not everybody has a intranet page that they can get on. Like, how do you make it accessible to your frontline workers, especially where they may majority be male? You know, we know that men find it really, really difficult. And many men find it really difficult to ask for help at the best times. So we know that we've got to think about who are our at-risk groups as well. A lot of your frontline workers are potentially low socioeconomic status, low levels of education, and it comes out through the research time and time again that there are these groups of people who that information doesn't necessarily get out to in the workplace, but they are at higher risk of experiencing some of these problems. So you made some really great points there. Thanks, Joanne. Jan's put in the chat box, make sure that financial wellbeing is recognised in the workplace and create a safe space where it can be discussed. Great to hear that you've got a wellbeing team that's promoting that at the moment. And Prad says that it is amazing. So it sounds like we're sharing some really great tips here. So I think that's a unanimous kind of decision that employees should provide information and support around financial wellbeing. Don't think we touched on the why so much, but I think ultimately, you know, if we want people to be thriving individually, that's morally the right thing to do. But also from an employee's perspective, if we want people to be at work and productive and engaged, and not costing us money because they're off sick and lack of engagement, presenteeism, it's a winning business strategy, isn't it? It's part of your mental health and well-being strategy. That should be part of your business strategy. How do we make sure that we have a workplace that is thriving because of a symptom of individual thriving, rather than that's the focus, because the focus should be on helping individuals to thrive. Great. Okay, so we're going to look at support and improving financial well-being now. We've touched on a lot of things there, so that's great that Sarah, you know, let's talk Money Week next week. So this is a really great week to get on board with and help people to start talking about money, financial stigma, raising awareness around why people might be struggling to talk about it and ask for help. You know, it's a real fear for people to do that. So get on all over Talk Money Week. If you are doing anything about stress awareness day to day, you could mention it in there, you know, that financial stress is the biggest contributor to stress in the UK at the moment. How do you embed it into the business and the wellbeing strategies as well? So filtering it into financial wellbeing, being a big part of that wider wellbeing and mental health piece that you're doing. Provide access to information and advice around finances. Like I said, your EAPs often do stuff like that. I know up here in the northeast we do have a couple of brokers as well that go into businesses and they do you know, web sessions around how to save, so that people understand ways that they can take action themselves. You can also provide information on opportunities for short-term savings also. So how do people do that? One that I use on my phone, on my app on my bank phone, is every time I pay for something, it kind of rounds it up and then puts it in my saving account. And it might just be like, I bought a cup of coffee and it rounded up to the next pound. It was 60 pence, but by the end of the month, I've usually saved about 30 quid in there. So you know, there are ways for short-term savings to actually happen that are really free and easy for people to use. Provide access to affordable credit and create a mentally healthy workplace culture of care, which is exactly what Jan was just saying there. So there's a couple of ideas there. But what I'd like you to think in a little bit more depth is, you know, who are your colleagues? Who are your colleagues and what information do they need to know? Because, you know, if you've got a workplace that there's the majority of people under the age of 35, they may not necessarily be thinking about something that somebody over the age of 40 is. So if you're thinking about your workers who are aged 15 to 35, you know, what kind of financial concerns or things do you think that they may need to know about at that age? It could be saving for a mortgage, could be things like increasing your credit report, your credit score. Anything else that you think that age range might be thinking about? Might not necessarily be about creating a will, that's for certain, is it, when we're at that age?
We might have the group 1 and group 2 workers a little bit more concerned about things like interest rates and you know, increasing costs there. Maybe people in group 3 might not have that fear or that level of borrowing that they need to consider with the rise in interest rates.
Yeah, excellent, great point there, Claire, absolutely. And then also in group 1 and group 2, a lot of them may be parents, childcare costs, going to work and having to pay for childcare as well. So there may be some additional things to think about, thinking about who your colleagues are and giving them advice and guidance on how do we do things to prevent the problems in the first place, rather than waiting until it's a problem and then chucking stuff at the back end of it. And then workers aged 40 and onwards, so that's me. I definitely got into my 40s and started thinking about wills and life insurance and all of that stuff. So completely different mindset, isn't it? Completely different way of thinking. Much more, gosh, when I was in group 1, I was working 2 jobs and a single parent. So my financial stresses were completely different to what they are now. As a business owner, good income coming in, and some financial security there. So completely different way of thinking in our mindset. So have a little think about that. Who are your colleagues? And like Joanne said, think outside of the box. What information can we provide for those people on a preventative note? And then as a reactive way of thinking, so if you do find that you have people who are in the yellow, the orange, the red, what information or support would be useful for your colleagues who are experiencing poor mental health currently? Some of the things that Our Minds Work are providing for a lot of our clients at the moment are things like beating burnout, so that people are understanding stress and how workplace stress can be a big contributor. Because remember, this doesn't happen in isolation. So if you've got financial stresses, work-related stresses, family stresses on top of that, it really can create chronic stress, which can ultimately make people really unwell. So giving people the skills and the knowledge and the tools to be able to look after their own mental health as well. Use things like a stay well at work support plan, stress risk assessments where it might be needed, and giving them information about financial well-being and how they can manage that. So we do 2 sessions like this, but they're aimed at employees. And we also do a half-day workshop, which are aimed at mental health advocates. So if you've got anybody in like wellbeing roles, mental health advocate, mental health first aiders, we give them the information to then get out there into the workplace and start sharing that, raising awareness, tackling the stigma as well. So there's a couple of ways to think about it there. Anyone want to add anything else to that that might be popping up into your mind? No, I think we've covered a lot already, actually, haven't we? That's for certain. Some really great ideas there. So just to kind of coming up to the end of the session now, just want to give you a couple of ideas of some other support that you can find available. As I mentioned a lot today about some of the research that Wagestream's been doing, we've actually partnered with Wagestream because we feel like financial well-being is a major part of achieving individual thriving. And when we're looking at creating mentally healthy workplaces, this is a really important part of that. So Wagestream, I'm going to tell you a little bit about them in a moment. We've not just partnered with them, we actually use them ourselves. So we've signed up to the Wagestream app, which I'll tell you a little bit about, and our employees are already using it. So if you would like some more information about Wagestream or an introduction to somebody at Wagestream to discuss how they can support you and your employees, just contact me and I'll make a little introduction to somebody there. Obviously, at Our Minds Work, we provide lots of training, workshops for managers, employees, mental health advocates and first aiders. We do a lot around mental health on lots of different topics, but it does actually include financial well-being as well for people. So do get in touch if you're looking for some educational sessions that provides information, tools to help people. We've got things like a worry tree activity that we do with people in those sessions. We make them really engaging and interactive and give them the tools that they need to get support themselves. Mental Health and Money Advice Charity is a really great one-stop shop as well for anyone looking for advice and guidance on there. I haven't got this on here, but step change is another one that you can signpost people to, especially if they're struggling with debt. Mind have lots of information on money and mental health as well. So great resources, you can download them, print them out, share them if you're doing any wellbeing sessions around financial stress. And the Martin Lewis Mental Health and Money website as well is a really great resource that you can get in touch with very easily and download resources and information to share with people. So let me tell you a little bit about Wagestream before we finish the session for today. As I said, we're already using this, and the moment we sent the invite out to our employees to use it, it was used straight away. So what that told me was that my employees were struggling with financial pressures and they hadn't said anything about it, but providing them with that app, and because I could see the back end, I could see that that was what they were using it for. And then I had a little chat about it, just said, you know, I've just noticed that you've used this with your flexible pay, you know, is everything okay? The boiler had broken 3 days before payday, you know, no savings there. So it was like, great, this was, you know, really, really helpful for them to use it, but it stimulated a conversation as well. So it can help people to budget. You know, when you see your salary there, you can see how using this flexible pay part of that app means that you can access a certain amount of your pay in these crises, in these moments where there's just no other help that you can use. And, you know, preventing people from using those, I've forgotten the terminology that they use for them these days, but those short-term loans that can have, you know, interest rates that really, really can end up putting people into much more debt because of using them. So it can prevent that from happening. It also helps people to save. So if you are anything like me, I'll go, oh, I'm going to save some money out of my wage. And then it hits me bank and I'm like, right, I need a new thing. I need all the new things, and I don't end up saving any of it. So it can really help to save before your salary actually hits the bank. So you're actually saving it rather than spending it. I've never been particularly great with money. They do also provide some coaching there. So they've got a web chat that's on there with certified coaches to provide some of that guidance for people. You can get discounts on supermarkets as well, so that you can pay for your groceries using these discount vouchers. There's support there with bill reminders and helping people to switch to lower rates for oh gosh, energy. I don't think there's any such thing as a lower rate in energy these days, but yeah, switching them around is a really great way of helping to lower some of those rates. There's also lots of other benefits, as you can see there. I know one of the questions is always when we talk about this is how much is it going to cost? It is very low cost to an employer to subsidize something like this per person. So it's definitely worth just considering it, having a chat with one of the Wagestream team. I can make an introduction to Lisa for you, who's lovely. You know, she'll have a little chat with you about it, organize a demo for you so you get to understand what it is. And then obviously you can make an educated decision from there if that's what you would like to provide. So a little bit of a summary before we end the session, just in time. I just want to say thank you so much for everybody for attending today. I'm really passionate about this topic because I myself in my 20s ended up in a significant amount of debt and I had to go bankrupt. There was no other option for me at that point. I was a single parent, just come out of a really volatile relationship where those debts had accumulated. And I know what it's like to be sat there with the letters piling up, not being opened, worried about people ringing you, worried about debt collectors. It is awful. And it was a contributing factor to, you know, me experiencing very low mood, depression, and mental health problems as well. So really passionate about helping people around this. And I know the fact that you're all here today is also telling me that you are too. And it's really, really, I'm so happy to hear all the things that you're already doing. So if there's anything that we can do to help more, do get in touch. What we've covered today is everything about why financial well-being is so important when it comes to our mental health and individual thriving. When we have individual thriving in the workplace, a symptom of that is a winning business strategy. It's as simple as that. So making sure that we're doing what we can to support people is really important. We know the worst is to come. We know people are already struggling at work with their mental health and financial stresses, but they're not talking about it. And when people don't talk about it, it can lead to, unfortunately, that red end of the section, the continuum, where nobody's asking for help and people become really unwell. And we know that the end of that scale is suicide. We know that that is a tragedy going to come. It's historical. We've seen it happen before. So there are things that you can do, and I do hope that you do take away some of those ways that you can engage your whole of your employees, but thinking about what do they need, their age ranges, you know, where are they at, what kind of things may they be struggling with, rather than they just don't have enough money to deal with debts. Help to be more preventative and give them information on how we can tackle things now for the future. Because remember, financial well-being wasn't just about having money in the bank. It was all about that security, that longer term, the empowerment and control that we're able to feel around that. So if anyone has any questions, I will hang around for a couple of moments. However, thank you very much. If you do have any questions, feel free to share them if you don't have to dash off at 10 o'clock. But thank you very much for attending, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.